and we begin with the land acknowledgement. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge that we are meeting on Robinson-Huron Treaty territory. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Anishinaabe. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, including the Métis people. We are grateful to have this opportunity to gather here. Welcome, everyone, to this afternoon's candidate meeting. My name is Folgo Delavadova, and I have the privilege of moderating this afternoon's meeting. I am a retired educator and a member of the District 3 Algoma RTO ERO. I would like to welcome all of you here. Let us pause to recognize the privilege of being able to exercise our vote in a strong and free democratic society. This meeting today is intended to assist us in making more informed election choices. I would like to express our thanks to Branch 25 of the Royal Canadian Legion for allowing us to use this room for our event. This event is sponsored by the District 3 Algoma RTO ERO and Branch 25 of the Federal Retirees. We would also like to thank Rogers TV Community Programming for live streaming our event and for having it available on their Rogers TV Community Shorts YouTube page. Thank you. A little bit of housekeeping. Before we begin, first thing is to turn off the cell phones. We'll be respectful to all the people who have to speak. Washrooms, if you go out the door, straight down the hall, there's a washroom there. Or if you go halfway down the hall and turn right, which would lead you to the restaurant, there's another washroom there as well. Also, a reminder that respectful conduct is required on these premises throughout this entire event. Election materials are on the table over there by the wall, and they are for the audience for you to take later. The candidates of the four main political parties were invited to this event. Hugh Stevenson is the Conservative Party of Canada candidate. Yesterday, he sent his regrets, but provided his cell number if there are any voters who would like to reach him to discuss any issues. I will provide his cell phone number here, but you don't have to write it down. If you really need it, you can see me later and I'll provide it again at that time. His cell phone number is 705-989-9733. Now, I would like to introduce the candidates who are present in the order in which they will start answering questions. This order was determined just a few minutes ago by drawing lots. The candidates will have their name cards in front of them at the table. Okay. Let me explain the agenda and the ground rules for this afternoon. We will start with approximately 1 hour of predetermined questions. Although today's dominant concerns include trade and ongoing geopolitical tensions, we recognize that there are other critical issues which also significantly impact the lives of Canadians. 1 in 5 Canadians is age 65 or older. The proportion of older adults continues to grow. Our membership has identified critical issues of importance for Canada's aging population and the generations of Canadians coming after us. This afternoon, our prepared questions will focus on some of those other issues. Our questions will be posed by a panel composed of the president from the Algoma branch of the National Association of Federal Retirees and the president of District 3 Algoma, RTO ERO. I would ask the panel members to identify themselves now and to represent their association. I will begin with Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda McDonald. I'm the president of the Algoma branch of National Association of Federal Retirees, and we represent retired and working members of the Federal Public Service, Canadian Armed Forces, RCMP, and federally appointed judges, their spouses, and survivors. Thank you. And we are the largest advocacy organization in the country for those groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Good afternoon. I'm Wayne Greco. I'm president of RTO, Retired Teachers of Ontario, District 3. I represent the members of Algoma, 1,200 plus members. We're a national organization representing the interests of seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with Terry Sheehan and alternating, each candidate will be asked the same question and allowed 1.5 minutes to answer the question. The next round of questions will start with the second candidate in the lineup, and that would be Robin Eshkabak, and so on a rotating basis. A timekeeper will keep track of time allotment to each candidate for each question. There will be a signal to let candidates know when their time is up. When a candidate sees the signal, he or she should wrap up by bringing their current sentence to a close. Could I ask the timekeeper to demonstrate that signal now? There it is. Big red flag. I will interrupt if a candidate does not respect the signal. The candidates have been previously made aware of these rules. Once the panel has completed the questions, the audience will be invited to ask their own questions. An audience member can address their question to one or more of the candidates. Questions will last approximately 20 minutes. When the audience question period has concluded, each candidate will be invited to make closing remarks, again for a minute and a half. Closing remarks will be made in reversed seating order. So we will begin with 1, 2, 3, and end with 3, 2, 1. This time will also be monitored. So let's get underway. May I ask the panel to pose its first question?
The first question deals with aging in place. Canada's health and social infrastructure did not and is not keeping pace with an aging population. Health, finances, transportation, safety, and other considerations pose challenges for older adults. We need action and investment in the necessary services and supports. What would your government do to enable older Canadians to live independently and age with dignity in the place of their choice?
Terry, you're up first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, and thanks for the land acknowledgement, and thank you to the two groups for putting this important discussion on. Our government has worked very hard on supporting seniors to stay where they choose to. It's about choice. It's about seniors having a choice of where they want to stay. So we have put in place a number of measures. First of all, supporting a choice of where they wish to live. And I do believe that seniors deserve the right to live at home like my mother does on Arizona Avenue. Thank you.
Does it start when you start?
I start when you start.
Miigwech, it is Green Party policy to put a cap to make it affordable. That sorry, I'm so nervous again. I thought I would get used to this. There is a comprehensive plan to address the healthcare shortages, to close the gaps in qualified medical students waiting and attending to go to medical school. There are to enforce and enhance the Canada Health Act, ensuring all new federal health funding goes extensively to public, not-for-profit services. I think this is very important as it keeps the costs low and affordable to everybody, ensuring access to a family doctor, nurse or practitioner, or somebody on the community healthcare team that fully integrates mental health services as insured under Medicare benefits. To implement a universal pharmacare and expands the Canadian dental plan to all eligible Canadians. I think that encompasses and it's, again, as needs come up in the community, we need to be filling these gaps with, we have a lot of qualified individuals coming through our community and keeping them here, whether it be through the college, and ensuring that our youth stays locally employed here in our healthcare system, and we keep that cycle our youth, taking care of our elders coming through. Miigwech.
Ani, everybody. Laura Mayer for the New Democrats. New Democrats would make sure that seniors don't fall through the gaps by bringing in a national senior strategy to make seniors' healthcare a priority, to reduce isolation and tackle seniors by taking the profit out of long-term care. I think that that's something that we've spoken about at length, strengthening the Canada Health Act to ensure that federal funds are going directly to public health care. Free medications for seniors with universal public pharmacare. We know that moving towards a universal pharmacare program actually costs the government, costs the provincial government and the federal government more money. Ending pension theft by ensuring that seniors with pensions are at the front of the line when corporations fail. Improving services for seniors living in rural and remote communities. I'll say personally, and I'll try and make this really quick, my grandmother, she lived alone till she was 88 years old. And just that last little hump, she was in palliative care and she needed help. And she stayed with me and my family for quite a few months while she was in her last months. And I know firsthand the difficulty with patching together services to ensure that people are getting long-term care, they're getting really effective PSWs coming in, to be able to actually effectively, as a person who has no healthcare experience, I'm a lawyer, I didn't go to school for PSW, but I think I could try and do that now after doing some palliative care. But Chimigwech, everybody, and thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. In the last federal cabinet shuffle, the government did not include a Minister of Seniors and what we view an important position to ensure that government decisions and policies are viewed through a seniors lens. Seniors with a mandate to protect the rights, dignity, and inclusion of older Canadians, backed by sustained funding and authority.
Robin, you're up next, please.
Miigwech for the question. What an excellent question. Yes, I would 100% support that. And again, I do believe that a part of what I stand behind the clan system, that when everybody gathers and meets the way needs are met, and that's by having that voice through a minister, and however that is conducted. 100%, I would for sure support that. Was that the rest of the question? Miigwech.
I think that having a Minister of Older Persons would pair really nicely with having a national senior strategy. We know that our population is aging. We've been told this for many years, that we need to prepare and ensure that we're going to have enough people in these roles in long-term care, in PSW, in nursing, to care for an aging population. And we are not ready. We have been told this for many years, but we're not ready yet. So the idea of actually having a minister responsible for older persons and actually having a really succinct strategy on how we ensure that we're caring for people in dignity and ensuring that we're ensuring that they're not falling through the cracks is really important, and I think that the NDP would support that.
Thank you very much for the question. And in the recent cabinet shuffle, Steve McKinnon, who was the Minister of Seniors, that did quite a great job at shepherding in dental care for seniors, as well as a host of other very important seniors issues, is still responsible for seniors. He just changed his title, and it's called Jobs and Families now, but he is responsible for the seniors. He's done a good job, and he continues to do a good job. And our government is taking a look at, sort of this whole approach to make sure that seniors, are looked at through the ministry, all ministries, and how we take a look at it, whether it's accessibility, whether it's health, whether it's a number of issues that are important, because for healthcare, we also introduced pharmacare, which, is really important for seniors. 1 in 5 seniors have diabetes. And one of the first things that we rolled out was diabetes medication. And that is really, really critical and important to many people in this community, and including Indigenous communities that also suffer from diabetes. My wife and kids are members of Batchewana First Nation as well. And my niece works at the health unit at Batchewana First Nation. So, we need to make sure that we have that kind of support in a government holistic approach. Every single minister, including the Prime Minister Mark Carney, is thinking about seniors. He is boosting, because of the Trump tariffs, he is boosting the guaranteed income supplement over the next year by $650. And he is also making sure that the RIFs have the ability to maintain that 25% threshold that we've heard for over the years, so that people can hang on to their savings, especially in this Trump tirade of market instability.
Next question.
Next question has to do with universal public pharmacare. Canada is the only country in the world with universal health care that lacks universal drug coverage. In 2021, Statistics Canada found that 1 in 5 adults in Canada, many of them seniors, did not have insurance to cover their medication costs. Last October, the Pharmacare Act received royal assent in the House of Commons. This framework sets out a path for the creation of a single-payer national pharmacare pharmacare coverage. Presently, the Pharmacare Act covers 2 types of medications, diabetes and contraception. Before the prorogation of Parliament, the intent was to extend coverage to other medications widely used by Canadians. Would your government support the national single-payer universal pharmacare program whose framework is now in place? Would your government expand pharmacare coverage to cover a wide range of essential medications under a public insurance program without user fees?
Absolutely. It is the position of the NDP that universal pharmacare is a priority for the NDP. It was part of the confidence and supply agreement with the Liberal government that brought pharmacare in, even in its reduced form. It was part of that agreement, and the NDP, the MPs that were in Parliament had to push incredibly hard to get that done. And we know that no one should go without the medicine they need because they can't afford it, but that's the reality for millions of Canadians. I'll tell you a quick story. My father, he lost his job when I was 17, and I didn't understand at the time that he was also losing his pharmaceutical insurance. And he actually went into a medical crisis afterwards because he didn't have the medication that he needed. And it took me a while to put those pieces together, that losing your job meant losing your insurance, meant losing access to your medication. And that is so important to ensure that we're getting the preventative care that we need to ensure that our universal public health system is sustainable for the long term. So yes, we absolutely support universal single-payer healthcare, or pharmacare.
Miigwech. Similar policy, similar support.
Thank you very much for the question. And yes, we undertook a very important thing in getting that pharmacare done. It was really, really important. To me, universal health care isn't universal without pharmacare. And we, working in Parliament, were able to get 2 critical pieces of legislation that I already referenced and that you referenced now. The diabetes medication, like I said, 1 in 5 seniors suffer from diabetes. I know how expensive it is. My Aunt May, she spent a lot of money on diabetes medication, and it is very, very difficult. So I was proud of what we did, and in the women reproductive rights, we also introduced that as well. Our plan was to continue and go forward, but as you know, in the fall, the NDP ripped up the supply and confidence agreement that we had undertaken. We could have done a lot more in that time period, and when they did that, the Conservatives took advantage, and what they did is filibuster. And for those of you who don't know what filibuster is, they talk about anything and everything to jam us. They did it in committees, they did it in Parliament. It was like they'd be reading out of a phone book. When we're trying to do important legislation, like continue on with healthcare improvements, they had taken an absolute terrible way in dealing with Parliament. But I'm glad to say that Mark Carney is dedicated to improving our healthcare system.
In the environment that we're in, preventing a lot of the environment that we're in, preventing a lot of the cancer being put upon us and forced upon us, through, speaking up for the right to have clean air and clean water, starting at the basic needs and, again, putting less strain on our healthcare system, doing what we can, taking care of each other, and making sure that nobody goes without in this good way. Miigwech.
Back to number one. Oh, sorry. We're back to number one. I was just informed that some people at the back having a little trouble hearing. So if you can hold your mic a little bit closer to your face, I think that would solve the trouble.
We will. We will. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, great.
Good. Do you want me to repeat what I said before? No, I'm kidding. I can talk to you afterwards.
I lost my place. The question is in regards to national long-term care standards. During COVID-19 pandemic, the health system failed the residents of long-term care homes. In January 2022, as part of its cooperation agreement with the NDP, the federal Liberal government committed to tabling a Safe Long-Term Care Act to ensure that seniors are guaranteed the care they deserve, no matter where they live. The government began developing the Safe Long-Term Care Act. However, the Safe Long-Term Care Act was never introduced into legislation. Our organizations have long advocated for a national plan for public, not-for-profit long-term care homes with national standards and processes for robust accountability. Two questions. What would your government do to work towards this goal of national enforceable long-term care standards? How can the federal government and the provinces work together to ensure that national long-term care standards are implemented and enforced?
Well, thank you for that very important question. During COVID-19, we saw what happened in our long-term care homes across Canada. They generally, in healthcare, falls under provincial and territorial jurisdiction. But in crisis, we sent the Army in. And we sent the Army in there, and thank you to our Canadian military that went in there and really saved lives and helped our senior citizens. Well, they have a duty after that they see action to write reports, and when we got that reports, that's when we undertook to make sure that we started to get involved. So we put $3 billion into the long-term care situation. We started developing that act. But again, I go back to the fall when they ripped up the agreement. It made it very, very difficult for us to get things passed. But the new Mark Carney government is committed to long-term care and new hospitals and new clinics, putting billions of dollars aside to build and renovate hospitals in underserviced areas, setting up clinics and getting doctors and nurses that are so critically needed by getting more medical spaces in our medical schools, more residencies, by working with the provinces, territories, and Indigenous communities in consultation. And we have that commitment to improve long-term care, as well as supporting PSWs with a tax, refundable tax credit of over $1,000, because they are some of the best workers.
Your time is up.
Miigwech for the question. Again, with that's the struggle we've seen with the current government, and how do we push forward with addressing these needs that haven't been met. And I think that might be the second question in a row where we're not meeting the demands already as it is, and that's where we need to change now to implement, to push the policies through that people have that voice. And I really feel that for my grandmother and great-grandmother to struggle inside long-term care facilities during the pandemic, it was really tough to see. It was really hard because we really wanted to break her out of there. but again, not having that voice and not knowing what's going on, and there's a little bit of a fear that we don't have the qualified people, but that's what we need to ensure, and putting the provinces in charge and delegating and making sure that everybody's receiving that qualified, the quality care that everybody deserves and needs at the end of the day. But I believe that it would be putting provincial, those authorities in charge of their jurisdictions, if you will, and making sure at our level, at the federal level, that there's accountability across the board, that you can see that. And there's I also believe that the information that's online, that out there needs to be governed in a better way for our seniors and our elders, so that they are receiving the accurate information, and that it's shared across the board to the solutions that are out there, but again, making sure that you're receiving the accurate information.
Yeah.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I get a reminder of the question? I'm like writing in which other things.
What? Oh, sorry. What would your government do to work towards the goal of a national enforceable long-term care standard? And how can the federal government and provinces work together to ensure that the standards are implemented and enforced?
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that. So the issue is really the relationship between the federal and the provincial government. We've seen, so say for example, $10 a day daycare, it took years for that to be implemented at the provincial level. It was a huge push and a huge effort to be able to get that implemented in Ontario. The NDP knows that that is the way it's going to be with the pharmacare bill as well. That it is going to take years to negotiate, it's going to be full of bureaucracy, and there's going to be pushback at every level, especially from the Ontario government. So we know that for long-term care, 29% of them in Canada are owned by for-profit companies, right? 60% of them in Ontario are owned by for-profit companies. We need to ensure that we need to go beyond a long-term care act. We need to look at, this is something I've spoken about before, but housing as a human right. So safe housing as a human right would also affect for seniors. So the ability to live in dignity, to live in safe and affordable places is something that we need to go beyond a bureaucratic agreement between the federal and the provincial government and look towards what kind of litigation might we need to do to ensure that human rights are being respected in this province.
Next question goes to number 2, who is Robin, and the next question, please. Yes.
Okay. The next question has to do with the UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. RTO, ERO, and the National Association of Federal Retirees support the International Longevity Centre Canada's demand of the Canadian government to take immediate and decisive steps toward leading and supporting the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. Our organizations believe that an international legal framework to protect the rights of older persons is an essential component of the difficult work of dismantling systemic ageism and ensuring a more just and fair society for all Canadians as we age. This convention would have the world witness and hold accountable how countries treat their older people. What steps would your government take towards supporting a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons? And in the limited time you have, please explain your position.
If that's Miigwech for the question. If that's a position to be filled, I would love to be that representative for sure on the representing ageism in the way that I have not shared a personal story, but I'm so proud of my own father for continuing his work and not believing in ageism himself as a steelworker. I'm very proud of him for all the years that he's put into the plant. Miigwech for that question, because it is important that you are your own voice. You can govern when you want. Just because the government stipulates an age, like what is that? Why? But at the end of the day, you know, you do want to preserve and make sure that assets that you have invested in all along are protected, that they are there for you, and that you can decide what happens to that. in this good way. You know, I was underage when this happened to me personally, when I couldn't speak up to what happened to what was supposed to be my brother and my own assets when my mom passed away. So there's another form of ageism on the other side. Again, we tried to fight at a young age for that protection, but nonetheless, the people should honor whatever it is at the end of the day, how you would want to govern your own investments. And the UN, I think, would be a great step in forwarding that leadership in representation. Miigwech.
The NDP, I'm sure, would support having a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. I think what I'll say in regards to this is that somebody who is an Indigenous person, I'm very familiar with UN frameworks. We have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It took about 10 years for it to get adopted within Canada, to be patriated into our law. And what happened was that there was an act created that talked about a framework for implementation. So right now what's happening is that there's only these incremental pieces of being implemented and not like a fulsome engagement with what free, prior, and informed consent means. So now it's at the point where it's in the courts and it's being involved at that level where you're talking about what UNDRIP means to Canada and what does that mean to be the law of the land. So in terms of a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, if we were to support it and to adopt it federally and nationally, we need to ensure that it's not just a framework, but an actual rights, and ensure that it's being implemented really effectively across the country.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, you know, and I'm sitting in this room and I take a look in the corner and I see the flag for the United Nations, you know, and I think about the world and the way it is today, especially with Donald Trump pulling back on supporting the world, supporting everyone, and all the nonsense that's going on, that I think it's more and more important that Canada continues to play a greater role. You know, not only in, you know, making sure that we ourselves are self-sufficient and looking after our own economy, one economy, and looking after our seniors and older peoples, but also working with the United Nations on the United Nations Rights of Older Persons. And that's something I can get behind. And, you know, for people, how things happen is we have a national caucus. Each party has a national caucus, and we get together once a week and we have discussions about important things. And what I do is I listen and hear. And when I hear something and I want to move on it, I go to my national caucus and I get the support of my fellow MPs, and then we move forward on it. So I am committed to fight ageism. Ageism has no place in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma at all, whether it's micro or big. It's absolutely unacceptable. You know, you guys, all of us, are so appreciative of you, and we will do what we can to continue to support you, make sure that ageism does not exist.
Next question, please, and that goes to Laura.
Next question deals with climate change. Climate change is causing significant impacts across Canada and around the world. The responsible use of resources, conservation, protection of air, land, and water are all critical to a sustainable future. The environment can't be an afterthought in our decision. It needs to be part of our decisions, a reference point. How will your government tackle the issue of climate change, and in what ways would your government approach that issue?
I think that part of this is really about taking concrete action that is not only about consumers, but also about the big polluters. And we know that Canada as a country, you know, we subsidize oil and gas, we buy pipelines. So in terms of doing an actual just transition from fossil fuels to green energy, we have to stop letting big polluters off the hook and ensure that they're actually paying taxes in Canada, so that that's going into the public pocket. So if they are polluting, that those taxes come back to public services to help us deal with some of the outcomes of what climate change is. We know that our transportation's at risk in terms of flooding, wildfires, that our healthcare is at risk in terms of poor air quality. Those things are actual tangible outcomes of a changing climate and a changing world. So we need to ensure that we're investing in climate adaptation and disaster preparedness. We need to stop big banks doing some greenwashing where they're saying they're investing in green energy, but really it's kind of, secret fossil fuels things. And we need to ensure that we are creating a strategy to create good paying jobs by investing in clean energy, to create energy efficient, affordable homes, electric transit, and zero emission vehicles. And all of those are part of our transition away from fossil fuels.
Goes back to Terry. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. The economy and the environment go hand in hand. Conservatives think they're separate, but they are hand in hand. And we have worked very, very hard, not only across Canada, but here locally. We're going from a coal-based process at Algoma Steel to an electric arc. It's gonna be like taking 1 million cars off the road, combustible cars. I've talked to people that have lived all over the city, and they know what kind of pollution would happen, including the areas around Algoma Steel, where people would say, I couldn't put my laundry out because of it. But it's gotten cleaner and better, and we've invested in that. We're also investing in supporting the workers that will transition to new jobs at Algoma Steel through investments. And in this platform, we have more money for people to retrain for the new jobs. We're also looking, because of the Trump tariffs, at new lines, bringing back the rail line, because we're going to bring in a high-speed electric rail from Windsor to Quebec City. We used to produce rail here. That could create a lot of jobs going forward. So that's an example when we take a look at the national question that you're asking about what we're doing here in Sault Ste. Marie, Algoma. And we're going to continue to support the transition. We have canceled the carbon tax on individual gas, and we have replaced it with incentives for you to get electric vehicles, to get retrofit your homes, and a number of things as well. And we are also supporting the expansion of our national park system for everyone to enjoy as well, so we can save our water, flora, and fauna.
Robin?
Miigwech. What a great question. Nothing has been done by the current government in the past 9 to 10 years. Green Party supports a complete global coal phase out within 20 to 25 years, beginning with an immediate global ban on new coal-fired power plants, unless they are associated with proven capture and storage technology, which is not yet available. My snow is still black in the West End in Brookfield, okay? So that still says a lot. I could read this policy up and down all day. It's available for everybody. We know the issues and the transition. We're way far behind, unfortunately. That is the message of the day. Not enough is being done. The water, the fish, we have to go further into the lake for our fish, and that's unfortunate. We shouldn't have to have these kinds of problems. Our people need to be on the bush and in the water, protecting it. It's being encroached upon and taken, and the Indigenous voice is supported by the Green Party in speaking for the air and creation, the land and the water. But that a global price on carbon emissions high enough to discourage exploration of non-conventional oil resources, which have a marginal energy benefit, maximizing the carbon emitted in extraction. Again, we have not done enough with the steel plant to reduce that at all. I hear it all night long, smell it all day, you could feel it when you drive by. And as decades goes on, again, it's unfortunate that my mom had cancer 3 times, my dad had it once. And we don't, again, have enough doctors. How much longer do we have to endure this with this current government, with these needs not being addressed? Miigwech.
Next question goes to Terry.
Sorry. The next question has to do with financial security. Statistics Canada indicates 14.5% of Canada's older adults live in poverty. More than a quarter of older adults who live alone, the majority of them women, live in poverty. The government must monitor the financial needs of older people and ensure the Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security Program, and GIS realistically address those needs. Defined benefit pension plans have been proven to make retirement secure and would deliver the same retirement income at half the cost of defined contribution plans. How would your government address income insecurity that is facing so many seniors today? Secondary question, do you support the protection and expansion of defined benefit pension plans? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And as I had mentioned earlier, one of the first things that our government did was roll back the retirement age from 67 to 65. That lifted 100,000 seniors out of poverty. And Pierre Poilievre voted for that. Stephen Harper made that announcement at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. He didn't even face the seniors in Canada when he made that announcement. And then we moved on increasing old age security, which we did. What we did increased the GIS as well, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, by about $1,000 when we indexed it, and it raised almost 1 million seniors out of poverty, and many of them are women. And we also continue to support the Canada Pension Plan, and it has been increasing by about 50%. But Mr. Poilievre thinks that he could do better, investing himself. He has, basically not taken a very strong stand on supporting CPP, which is so important to our senior citizens, and has, basically taken similar views to some of the provincial leaders out in Western Canada. And so a new Mark Carney government will support seniors, as I mentioned, by increasing the GIS for over the next year by 5%. That's $652 because of this Trump threat and tariff to your savings, as well as the RIF program, which will be over the next year of 25%. Thank you.
Miigwech. Green Party policy is a green government that will accelerate the implementation of the Basel III standards and go beyond those standards in reducing the leverage ratios for the big 5 Canadian banks to 6%, and that 6% will be made up of common equity and retained earnings. That in order to protect the pension plan benefits which workers have earned, the Green Party of Canada recommends that provincial governments prohibit any businesses from taking possession of a pension trust which it administers or earnings thereof. That the Green Party calls upon the Government of Canada to review federal and provincial laws regulating the administration of pension plan laws that now allow failure of pension trusts and the loss of pension benefits which workers have earned. So again, putting in place, again, what you have earned and worked so hard for, that you don't have to worry, and that you have access to it when you want. Miigwech.
I think that we do support ensuring that our benefits remain the same, that they are tied to inflation, that we're looking at defined benefit pension plans for the NDP. But I think the bigger question is, what about guaranteed income, universal guaranteed income? It's been a conversation, the NDP has written bills on it, it keeps getting put off the table, but when you look at the actual financial analysis of guaranteed universal income, it actually is a cost savings for the government because there's less administration involved in it. So why don't we move towards that model? So ensuring that universally people have dignity, and actually look at the cost savings that we have and pulling people out of poverty. Now, in terms of the Band-Aid solutions, there's a ton of them. Ensuring that we're tying CPP, guaranteed income supplements, to inflation. We're looking at, true universal pharmacare, dental care, stopping quiet privatization by enforcing the Canada Health Act, the housing, ensuring that there's enough housing, and ensuring that there's national rent control for seniors, and actually looking at the Competition Bureau and beefing them up to stop grocery price fixing will help with the cost of living for seniors. But the conversation about poverty and lifting people out of poverty needs a universal solution, because we know that more and more people are struggling with this. I know many people within my sphere who are struggling with poverty and access to essential services.
Thank you. Next question goes back to Robin.
Thank you. Next question deals with geriatric training. Canada faces a shortage of geriatricians. The report in 2018 numbered the number of geriatricians at 304 for the entire country. We need to graduate more, but the number of geriatric specialists is capped. Beyond that, a wide range of healthcare professionals are needed and with more training in the area of seniors. What sort of geriatric training should be mandatory across healthcare?
Miigwech, of course, I would have a question like this. When my mom was a nurse, that was her unit at 2nd East at the Plummer Memorial Public Hospital. I loved going there and hanging out and hanging out with the geriatric crew was my crew, honestly. At the time, I would say understaffed, but this would be like mid to late 90s. And I have, again, pushed for the agenda to close the gaps on pushing for our local students in the nursing unit, in the nursing programs, to keep them here. Whether we need another hospital or not, or other units, say, to care for the geriatric and all our elders aging and whatever demographic they fit into, there are secure ways to build these secure facilities, and that's a part of the infrastructure for the Green Party. But again, those qualifications do need to be met, and we have to be vetting our own and making sure that if other people are coming from other countries and they want these jobs too, that they're also qualified, but that they meet our standards. Whether they're certified in another country, but meeting the demand is, we can do that, and by keeping our students local. Miigwech.
Thank you. Laura, then back to Terry.
I know firsthand the kind of skill that you need to have to care for somebody who is older. I've learned a lot of skills, especially from the PSWs and the nurse practitioners who came into my home. I felt a little bit like I was going back to school again. I think that it is incredibly important to have that kind of specialization. I currently work as the executive director for the National Council of Indigenous Midwives. And so that is also like an incredibly specialized function, but it is also one that is expansive. And there's lots of opportunities in there to create programs that are specifically geared to geriatric care that could be modeled after something like midwifery, where, you know, we have midwives here, you know, they are very trained nurse practitioners, they have this special certification. You know, maybe we have something like that where we're having incredibly trained nurse practitioners who have a geriatric specialization, who know how to care for people who are older, who know what the very particular types of needs and requirements are for people. And I think that that is something that the NDP would support. That's something that I in particular would support, because I know how incredibly important it is to have people who have that caring and compassionate and understanding way of caring for people.
Well, thank you very much for that important question. And Mark Carney and the new Liberal government have a plan to build up our healthcare. By working with provinces and territories, we're going to build up. We're going to work with provinces and territories and Indigenous communities to make sure that we are there at the table physically, building infrastructure for people to be trained, for people to be educated in the healthcare sector. We're going to also have a global recruitment strategy too as well, to take a look at recruiting docs and healthcare professionals that are trained in other countries that can easily come here. I know the United States has been one of the areas that people have been talking about that we're also looking at. We're also looking at bringing Canadians back to train here as well. We're also going to work with provinces, territories, and Indigenous communities on the credentials from other countries to make sure that they are able to get certified, and we will continue to support that. But if we build more medical training facilities and we have the ability to produce more. I think that is very, very important. But I also think it's up to all of us that we have to make sure that we get into the schools, and make sure that our young folks that are coming up understand the opportunities in healthcare. There's a lot of them, and we need to make sure that we're exposing them to these opportunities to train, and we're going to build out a whole training program in post-secondary for those people to seize those opportunities.
Thank you, Terry. Next question goes back to Laura.
This is the last of the pre-prepared questions, and it has to do with the water supply and safe water. At any given time, there are drinking water advisories in dozens of First Nations communities across Canada. The lack of clean, safe drinking water in First Nations is one of the greatest violations of the UN-recognized human rights to water and sanitation. Some communities have been forced to boil their drinking water for decades. There has been some progress recently, but drinking water advisories persist, and some have been in place for many years. Why are there places in Canada without potable water? What steps would your government take to upgrade water systems and alleviate the water crisis in First Nations communities?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think that I have a lot of experience in this area. I've done a lot of advocacy in terms of ending boil water advisories. There was one somewhat recently in Serpent River First Nation, and the reason for that is because they are downstream from the old uranium mines in Elliott Lake. They're also home to an acid plant that was decommissioned and that needed remediation. And so those kinds of things that were put very close to First Nations that caused a lot of environmental contamination were never remediated properly because they were kind of closed down before really more strict environmental standards came into place. So it isn't unacceptable. We do need to look at source water protection to ensure that our drinking water is clean from contamination. I think that for Sault Ste. Marie in particular, we need to look at, we are home and very close to Line 5 under the Mackinac Straits. It is a 70-year-old pipeline. It is 20 years beyond its expiry date. It has already been struck with an anchor more than once. If there is a oil spill in the Straits of Mackinac, we're all going to be affected by that. Our wildlife will be affected, our wetlands will be affected, and everybody is going to be affected by that kind of spill. So we need to address water issues across the country. We need to look at source water protection for every community to ensure that for the future, in terms of climate change, that we have safe drinking water for the next 7 generations.
Miigwech, what a question again close to my heart. I've refused to do the Stats Canada because I honestly felt like it was a way to track my people. Where are we? And whether this be a conspiracy or not, what an unsat government and time to be in that 35 First Nation communities are still on a boil water advisory. There's policy all over the place, but again, it's repairing the damage that's already been done. We can't stand for this. We're in a bad spot now with the fish and the mercury. Dryden up north, and then they want to bring nuclear waste back to Dryden, and there's another city on the table for that. No, we have to be paying attention, and no deals. I would say no more mining, no shovels into the ground until 35 First Nations across the board have access to clean water, as everybody should. Miigwech.
Thank you very much for that important question, and it is very, very critical water. It is something so important to us all, and our government has undertaken to work in a nation-to-nation way with Indigenous people in Canada to improve water. We don't have to look far from my current riding, where Batchewana First Nation were taking in skids of bottled water because their water wasn't up to speed. So working with Chief and Council and the community, we were able to get some funding for a new water treatment plant that is really, really critical for the people that are living there, but plus all the people that may want to go up there and live. That's just one example where we have to continue to work continually, and it needs to be enshrined in law. And Mark Carney has said that he is going to pass a law that will enshrine First Nations rights to water, and that is critical. That has to be in law going forward. And then we need to work with Indigenous communities for Indigenous stewardship, including the establishment of a new Arctic Indigenous Guardian program and funding Indigenous-led conservation and protection projects, such as, say, the one in Garden River that we recently worked with on protecting it, because Indigenous communities are the stewards of the land and the water, and we have to continue to work day and night to make sure that we continue to provide that in a nation-to-nation way, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you, candidates. I believe this concludes the prepared question and answer period. And now I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. And I would like to begin with a gentleman who is in the audience, but requested that I present the question to you from the podium. This is from Marty McCarthy. In Sault Ste. Marie, we have the Canadian headquarters of the Sea Lamprey Control Unit under the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Together with the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, located in Sault, Michigan, they operate jointly under the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. Together, the two countries have rescued the entire fish population of the Great Lakes from extinction by the lamprey. And this is over the last 50 to 60 years. With the Trump White House currently removing vital funding from all levels of their government, from their own citizens, what steps is the Canadian government prepared to undertake to preserve the continuation of Canadian funding for this vital program? This control program has multi-million-dollar impacts on food supply, tourism, environment, etc. Ontario also needs to be proactive to prevent any impact from our neighbor to the south. And from this period, you can ask the question to a particular candidate or to all candidates. So I will say that all candidates should respond for now, and I'll start with Laura.
I'm very familiar with the Sea Lamprey program. I'm a member of Council of Mississauga First Nation. We've actually, in the last 10 years, have treated the Mississauga River, I think twice for sea lampreys, because they are very detrimental on the impacts of all fish, but in particular for us, it's for the sturgeon. I know that this has been an issue. Great Lakes management, the approach to Great Lakes management has been an international one for a very long time. There's been a rollback of funding for the Inter-American Commission for those roles that are really vital for ensuring that it is the largest surface freshwater in the world. We are the guardians of that. And even though the Trump administration is rolling back on their obligations towards that water, that doesn't mean that Canada should be rolling back ours. And in fact, we should be figuring out how do we fill in the gaps and stay the course when there's instability and political instability across the river for us as we're across the river. And so I think that for sure we need to ensure that, and we need to look at partnering with, we might be able to partner, maybe it's not the U.S. Department, but it might be with the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. They're a very large group, and they are incredibly protectful of their source water.
Yeah, there's no particular order now, so
Thank you.
we'll try and stay within the minute and a half.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that question. The people working down at the Sea Lamprey place are A1 professionals. And I had the honor and privilege of announcing increased funding for Sea Lamprey. And just from the question, you can see that the results, have happened where we're protecting our fish stock. And I share that questioner's concern about Trump cutting across the board when it relates to environment and a whole number of things. But we have a thing called the Great Lakes Commission, and I meet regularly with them. And it's a joint board of people that work to protect our Great Lakes. Sea lamprey, Asian carp, that's another one that concerns me too as well. But we'll continue to support the great efforts that are happening right here in Sault Ste. Marie. One of the first things we did was unmuzzle the scientists. Let's get their advice. Let's listen to them. They're the ones that are providing us with the guidance on how we deal with not only our fish, but our forestry too as well. So yes, I am committed to continue to work, here in Canada to make sure we bolster our support, because we can't go back to the way the sea lampreys used to be. Everyone remembers how terrible it was not too long ago when they first started coming in here. And congratulations to everybody that's working at the sea lamprey place for protecting our fish. And I'm committed to make sure that we continue to do that here in Sault Ste. Marie for all the Great Lakes.
Miigwech, yes, of course, the Green Party would support anything and anything that's already working in a sustainable way, and monitoring the ecosystems and the lives which depend on them, to encourage other nations to do likewise. And again, the Green Party would supports very similar platform to what Laura was speaking to. And that we do this in the most effective ways to restoring the seafloor ecosystems that have already been damaged and impact across the board. Miigwech.
Good afternoon, and thank you for all the candidates that chose to attend today. We all appreciate you taking your time and answering questions of the people that are going to put you into a job. My question is not so much on seniors, but on the tariff situation. The Parliamentary Budget Office and all parties in the election would agree we're going to raise about $20 billion in tariffs from Canadians this year. And I'm wondering, with Canada exporting 4 million barrels a day to the US, why didn't the government think to put a 10, 20, 25% export tariff on our oil, which probably would have gotten the attention of the Americans a lot quicker than taking a Jack Daniels off the shelf? And this is for all three candidates.
I really appreciate the question. Unfortunately, I am not the current government and cannot answer to that.
Thank you for that very, very important question. Our position is three things against Trump: this unprecedented, unjust nonsense, and these tariffs that are happening. And I must comment, it is the seniors. When I'm knocking doors in Elliott Lake or Wawa or Sault Ste. Marie, I'm not going to name all the places, it's the seniors that are standing up so strong, because they built this country. They built everything that we have today, and he's trying to take that away from us, and you guys aren't going to let that happen, are you? Right on. And so on the tariffs, yeah, we have counter tariffs. We identified $155 billion, because we saw that movie in Sault Ste. Marie in 2018, and a lot of us here fought that fight. And, we supported workers, and we won. So this time we were ready, and we identified what we could do. But we're also working with provinces and territories too as well. So, the Jack Daniels, that's a provincial thing, and then, the oil and gas industry, we're working with them. But all options, like Mark Carney has said, are on the table. And what we're doing with our counter tariffs, the revenue, is all money will be used for workers and to support the industries that are affected. The other guy, well, who knows what he's going to use them for. It's
Thanks,
very
Terry.
similar Trump plans.
Laura, would you like to respond to that?
Even though I'm not part of the present government. I think that it's a valid question. I think that the issue is that putting 25% export tariffs on oil is that we don't have any of the capacity to actually refine it in Canada. So we depend on the refineries in Texas to be able to actually refine our oil for market. And so it just becomes a thing where we're punishing our own industries to be able to export that. But what I'll say about that is that conservative and liberal governments alike have relied too heavily on the goodwill of private corporations to serve a public interest. We had Petro-Canada, it was public, we sold it, we don't have any of the money from it, it doesn't go forward. When we look at other countries that are resource rich, countries like Norway, they have a sovereign wealth fund. So they do oil and gas development, and all of the revenue that they have to that, they created the largest pension fund in the world. It's worth trillions of dollars because they're funding it through their oil and gas exports, and they're using it to transition their way into a greener economy. So we rely too much on private companies and the goodwill of them, and we need to move away from that and ensure that we're building a better future.
Thank you.
My question pertains to those seniors who do not have a workplace pension. So those individuals who are dependent on OAS, GIS, and CPP, which of course depends on how much they earned in their previous earning years. And I understand that approximately 50% of Canadians do not have a workplace pension. So these individuals, notwithstanding recent enhancements to OAS, these individuals fall below the poverty line, euphemistically called the low-income cutoff. I'd like to ask what concrete steps you are prepared to take to lift those individuals out of poverty.
Universal guaranteed income, I think, is the thing that we need to be looking at. It's not just, it is very incredibly important for seniors, and especially those that don't have access to, who didn't have a workplace in which to pay into CPP. I know quite a number of people, a lot of people who worked on First Nations, they actually, they didn't have access to CPP until very recently, only within the last 10 years. So now they're looking at retirement and seeing that they don't have any kind of umbrella or any kind of nest to retire on, and so they are working longer and longer to actually support themselves. So I think that universal guaranteed income is the thing that we need to look towards. I think across the board, to lift people out of poverty for young people, that is also a really important step.
Would any other candidate like to respond?
Well, thank you very much, and that's such an important question. And having been the parliamentary secretary for seniors, I, was truly honored to work with our government to make improvements for seniors, in particular those that are, need the most help. And that's why, like I said, and I repeat, going from 67 to 65, taking 100,000 seniors out of poverty, and then, the indexing of the GIS, taking 1 million seniors out of poverty was important. Increasing the OAS as well, helping out many, many more. And that's why I was glad that Mark Carney has also said that he will increase the GIS by 5% or $652 and protect seniors that have invested in the market with the money that they have, because Trump's tariffs are sending them down. The other piece that we have to do is continue to take a look at what are the other costs that seniors incur. Dental care. Dental care I was very proud of that we rolled out with the seniors. Saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars for seniors that, for the first time we're getting dental care, because dental care is health care. And there's a whole bunch of other things that can lead to. The diabetes medication, saving about $1,700 a year. But there's a lot of things that we are doing, and as your representative, I'm committed to open to all ideas and to continue to be your voice within this government's caucus for continued increases in supports, because, you know, Mark Carney is the best person to do this, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring with Donald Trump. He's already said he's going to go after our pharmaceuticals. You know, he's going after everything. And we will be nimble, we will be strong. We're going to tear down barriers between the provinces and territories to make sure that doctors and nurses can practice across this country. And we're going to build up an economy that's not reliant on Donald Trump. And we're going to protect all people, including our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, Robert?
Miigwech for the question. Green Party supports redistribution of taxing big corps in order for the sustainability for everybody, and that nobody goes without. Once again, whatever is working stays, and that we keep supporting our community and holding them accountable. And I think that once we hold those big corps that are here in our own community accountable, we'll be able to be seeing a lot of change happen a lot quicker rather than waiting on policy from Ottawa. Miigwech.
Hello, good afternoon. Terry Sheehan, I must take my hat off to you in 2018. You were very instrumental in getting the steel tariffs removed from Algoma Steel. I've been a welder there for 52 years. So hats off to you, Terry. However, I cannot vote for you this time around because my daughter's sitting right beside you. I'll be 74 years old in August. I know I don't look like a senior, but some mornings I do feel like one. I'll be short and brief. Property taxes is ridiculous for what we get. We got potholes everywhere. It's not hard. When I was growing up, they used to carry a big 200-pound bottle of propane on the back of their truck, and they heated tar. And they had the wagon divided in half. Half of it was tar, molten tar, and the other half was fine stone. And they went around and they dropped the hot tar in these holes on the road. And then the other guy would shovel in sand and rocks, done. So property taxes, yeah. I'm approaching $4,000 where I live. I live on South Eden. It's a nice neighborhood. So, you know, if somebody could do something for that, that'd be why seniors are getting the boot from their home. They can't afford to live there no more. Cannot. And I'm sure a lot of seniors here could agree with me on that one. Fixing up our homes. I'm a welder. I don't like gas. I burn wood. It's, you know, I'm getting of the age where it's becoming difficult. It has to be a family event to get wood into my home. Anyways, I would like to possibly go to gas. You know, you're looking at $5,000 to $7,000 to go to gas. You go to gas, you might as well do your hot water as well. That's $10,000. Where am I going to get that? You know, there should be some kind of program out there for us seniors. I'd also like to see, make a comment about Enbridge. That 7-year-old pipe, that landed on, I've been following that, and that went to the governor of Michigan. She signed an executive order, and it got, because the oil company has bottomless pockets, it got pushed to Trump, and he derailed it. Then it got pushed to Biden, he derailed it. So yes, if that pipe ever breaks, it's 70 years old, being a welder, you know, that pipe's not gonna last much longer. It was already hit, they've already been down there, they already patched it, Yes, that pipe has got to come out and replace it. Yeah, you're going to create jobs, but at least it'll take the grief away from people that worry about water. Water is a gift. You cannot survive without water. From there downstream, it's going to affect millions of people. All our water is going to be poisoned. Thank you.
The nature of the statements may be directed more to a municipality or a province, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to that if you wish, even although your authorities are at the federal level. I'll give you an opportunity to respond. Go ahead, Robin, if you wish.
Miigwech, Dad, and you know that's why I'm here. I'm unfortunately homeless due to the current government not listening to the issues at hand. And we do need that accountability and that movement on across the board. I understand that you are one individual, one person, Terry, but you know, I'm right here beside you to work forward and work towards a better future. And if that's, you know, the three of us on behalf of the community moving forward, I do believe at the end of the day we could still push policy and support each other. The way the clan system I see it to be working, where everybody does have this voice on the tax issue, that's where you know, I wish you kind of would have done something. But again, I'm glad to be home, living in a tent. No, I have a trailer in my dad's yard, but it's due to the city tax issue and your government not honoring Indigenous voice.
Jim McMillich for the proud father. My father supported me through many election campaigns. In fact, I started on the school board in 1997 when I was in my 20s, and that's because a guy named Mike Harris was doing a lot to education back then, and I stood strong then. Now I've got a guy named Trump, and you mentioned about the tariffs in 2018. I was proud to stand strong then and fight. Thank you for the thumbs up. And I'm doing that now. There's too many workers that rely on that, but not just workers. Let's take it to older people, seniors, pensioners that rely on it. 8,000 pensioners that live in this area that rely on the survival of our steel industry. And when our steel industry was hit with those Trump tariffs in 2018, it was meant to destroy Algoma Steel. It was in bankruptcy because the Conservative government did nothing about the cheap dump steel, as you know. About the property taxes, that is, as Vogel mentioned, it's a city issue. But definitely I can direct you to the mayor and your city councilor too as well. They're the people to dialogue with. And thank you to both of you for the comments. And I just wish, again, the Conservative candidate was here to be here. I understand that he said he's somewhere else, but this was announced many weeks ago. And we all knew about it many weeks ago in the media. So, you know, we can schedule appropriately so that we can hear the seniors' voices. He missed the youth voices, you know. He missed the workers' voices. So, chi miigwech to everyone. Thank you very much, and thank you for being a proud dad. And thank you very much for your comments too about working together going forward.
Yeah. Laura, do you wish to respond?
Sure, I'll do really quick. Also, I think same property municipal taxes, you know, that's a local thing. But I think that where the federal government comes in terms of energy savings is making sure that greener home grants and those systems, they kind of sunrise and sunset with budget allocations. And so sometimes if you didn't have the money to get in on them early enough, they were already closed when you were doing the application at the end. So if you wanted to get a heat pump, if you wanted to do a changeover to a gas hot water heater and do those get solar panels, and you were too late in applying, or you didn't have enough capital of your own to apply, then you weren't eligible for those kinds of upgrades. So that's one role that the federal government can play, is helping with people, with seniors, to upgrade their homes. In terms of Line 5, I mean, I was part of an intertribal delegation that went to the United Nations Permanent Forum on the Rights of Indigenous people. I wrote submissions on Line 5, just talked about the dangerous, you know, the dangerous reality of what's going on there right now, and also what's going on in Bad River, Wisconsin. In terms of Line 5, there's an erosion of the river, and Line 5 is incredibly close to it. So there's also that issue as well. And the issue with us, and what we need to pay attention to as Canadians, is that Enbridge is a Canadian company that's actually operating in the United States and actually says that UNDRIP doesn't apply to the Ojibwe people that are living in the US. So there's a little bit of kind of odd things going on there. So it's a good thing to pay attention to.
We have time for another question or two.
Thank you, Fogo. Autism advocate here, and this question is for all candidates, and it has to do with the Canada Revenue Agency. So I don't know if folks are aware, but I do have a 22-year-old son with autism. I also sit on the Autism Ontario Board of Directors and have a social enterprise where over 75% of our staff and volunteers self-identify as being on the spectrum. So under Canada Revenue Agency guidelines for the disability tax credit, you have to apply once you hit 18 when you're transitioning to adult services, and the disability tax credit does expire. So last time I checked, there's not a cure for autism. I think we can all agree on that in this room. However, to reinstate that, it lasts 5 years. So you have to reapply, and you have to have it signed by a medical practitioner, which for folks living in remote areas, or if you don't have access to an occupational therapist or a physician or a speech pathologist, and most often they also charge you fees for doing that application. And this is for all candidates. Would you advocate for, as being in government, as being our representative, that the disability tax credit based on need and disability does not expire for those illnesses, long life impairments that do not go away? Would you advocate for that? Thank you.
Miigwech for the question. 100% advocacy. Again, that there shouldn't be anybody going without in our beautiful country. We have who we need here, and we need to be putting, investing in more supports, easier access. There shouldn't be fees to apply for that. That's taking more money out of your pocket. That. Yeah, there shouldn't be paying for forms. It sounds like it probably costs no, I'm not too sure. That's a lot of bureaucracy to be going through, and that's very unfortunate when, we have people who want to lead our country and aren't even doing a basic security clearance. Miigwech, maybe you can answer to why this is like this.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa, for your advocacy, not just on autism, but everything. It's been great working with you over these past number of years with Cafe for Good, just such goodness that comes out of there, for the people that are working there, but for the area, for the community as well. So, Chief Miigwech, thank you. And it's been great working with you on your applications and being tenacious and getting funding. Then you fast forward and you got Cafe for Good on Queen Street, repurposing a building. Grocery for Good, we self-funded, Terry. Yeah. Grocery for Good, and so I got to keep the plug. Cafe for Good too as well, and doing the same principled efforts that it's been so great working with you and getting that funding and being tenacious with you. On the Canada Disability Benefit, I think you're referring to, the tax credit. Yeah, I will work, hard to simplify the processes. That's one of the things that Mark Carney wants to do, is take a look at how the government functions and streamline it and, make smart investments. And that's really, really important, because going through processes with government can take whatever level, whether it's municipal or provincial or federal, can take some time. So I'm committed to doing it. On the Canada Disability Benefit, I will make a comment. I'm glad that we did it. It's being implemented in July. 600,000 low-income people will be eligible for it. It's $6.1 billion over the next 6 years. That will help too as well, and we're monitoring that to make sure the province doesn't. Yep. 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 Yeah, it's brand new and it has coming in July. So we're going to keep that commitment and we're going to watch the provinces to make sure they don't claw back. That was a concern by a lot of the stakeholder groups. On the national autism strategy, I was glad right from the get-go. I've met with the local autism families and groups and advocated for a national autism strategy, which is really, really important because it's a holistic approach, and that was just implemented in fall of 2024. So thank you very much for your work. We're making tremendous movements forward as it relates to autism, and anything we can do to simplify the process, I'm on board.
Thank you. Laura?
I was very lucky to marry into a family who actually founded the North Bay Autism Chapter. My husband's parents, my husband's sitting in the back today, he's nodding at me. He actually, his parents' home number was actually like the chapter number. So anybody who needed assistance with their child who had just gotten a new diagnosis, they would call his parents. And so I got a lot of information on some of the background and the bureaucracy. My brother-in-law, you know, I remember one time I was helping him with his forms because he had to fill out quite a lot of them. And so that's a policy change and not necessarily a legislative change, but it's one that should, in theory, be easy to implement. I think we've also heard stories about Canadian Armed Forces veterans who had to get doctor's note because they had lost a limb and they had to get a doctor's note for it, right? Just like every year. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I think that it's an inefficiency that needs to get a change, and it's a lot of bureaucracy that can get streamlined. And when those things are lifelong, I mean, it should be something where you can click, right? Like, this is not something that's going to change, right? I'm not going to magically wake up tomorrow and not have autism. So, you know, we with automatic tax filing, that might be something for somebody who is on disability, and even who is on CPP or guaranteed income. Automatic tax filing would really assist with that, right? So that we're just getting into the cycle and it's business as usual, and we're not having any gaps in funding flowing to these individuals.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, this is a question that I know a lot of people are concerned about. I appreciate all the comments that you made on the seniors issues, but the main one here too that I'm interested in is what your government would do for the arrest and release kind of situation, because it is a concern with the addiction things that are going up here in the north, and it is very close to me because I have a son that works in the police department up in Thunder Bay, and they are totally frustrated by it. So there has to be changes made. I just wondered what your comments would be.
I would love to do this. Okay, so I think the issue that we're hearing a lot in terms of catch and release is really in regards to, there's been a big underfunding of the provincial Conservative government of corrections facilities. They are all full. So And the justice is so backed up that we are at the point now where the Supreme Court is saying, hey, there's this amount of time that you can wait to actually have your trial. And if you're not there, if you haven't had a trial before then you have to be released. So it's actually a balance between respecting people's human rights and also having a place for them to go. So I think that in terms of that, we can't be, we can't believe the federal Conservatives that they're going to have a solution to the provincial Conservatives systematically underfunding corrections and underfunding justice. And I think that is one thing where those kinds of reforms need to be holistic, and they actually need to look at, there's provisions within the Bail Act that actually talks about reverse onus. And they're not necessarily being implemented because of the overcrowding, because of the backlog. So that's what I would say about that.
Well, thank you very much. And building on my NDP colleague's statement is that a lot of people are talking about C-75. C-75 always had bail provisions within it, and those decisions, were made by various people whether or not to implement them. But listening to police associations, listening to attorney generals from the provinces and territories, we passed a law with all party participation called C-48. So C-48 replacing C-75, which put the reverse onus on folks that are dealing with these people that would be in danger of being, bail threat, violent, IPV. And so we put that forward. And it's unfortunate that locally it hasn't been talked about by the Conservative candidate. He doesn't reference it ever, and didn't reference it in his previous job. And I have a question is when we talk about crime, when we take a look about a comparable to Sudbury, we're 25% higher, locally here. That's a significant amount, and they're a much larger city. But working on 48, Mark Carney's new government has said that they will make bail, restrictions even stricter, and working with provinces and territories, as they're the ones that have the vast majority of the administrative processes with bail and whether they're released or not, and including local police forces that under the directions of their leadership could be told to keep somebody, especially, and this will no longer be one of those, well, you could, you couldn't. It's reverse onus, where if they're violent, repeat offenders, intimate partner violence, guns, fentanyl, whatever, no, they should not be doing that. And that is what Mark Carney's going at. And on the federal side, we have a responsibility for the border and the RCMP. Mark Carney, we already reversed the cuts that Harper and Poilievre did of $1 billion to the RCMP and the Canadian Border Service Alliance, reinstating those folks, those federal workers. But we're also committed to hiring, under Mark Carney's plan, 1,000 more RCMP officers, 1,000 more Canada Border Service agents that can stop the guns, stop the drugs coming from the United States, and make our country safer. And we will do that at the same time working with provinces and territories to make sure that there are stricter, even stricter, past C-48 restrictions on bail. And I, again, wish the candidate was here from the Conservative Party, so I don't know, maybe that's why he's not here, because that is what is really happening. Thank you.
Miigwech, that sent me down a rabbit hole, Terry. Corruption, is that what, are we officially coming out with that? And that's what it is. But at the end of the day, I believe in prevention for the ones that are struggling with addictions, and that's. But also, I believe you were speaking about an officer, and that's. We need to protect the ones on those front lines, our police, our paramedics, our mental health workers, in order to prevent burnout. We need to be taking care of them as well, so that we have officers who want to show up and be able to handle the calls necessary, because again, I'm weary on what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say, but I have been getting phone calls again about the Conservative Party leader right now in our community, and I'm not even sure who to talk to about it, because it is quite worrisome about perhaps what city taxpayers have paid for, and that's not been disclosed to what and who and he's protecting, because there needs to be some training. I know there needs to be cultural sensitivity training, and that the different kinds of criminal activity need to be addressed, such as racism, people who are in poverty, people who are being judged because of how they dress and how they look. But I know that we can do better all around awareness, in order to prevention is where, but again, yes, higher, stricter bail limits for offenders. Had this been in place before, my niece, who's no longer with us, she might still be alive. And the police did very little, and as far as I'm concerned, botched the investigation. So we need qualified officers in our community who can show up and actually dismantle and advocate and protect our loved ones when they're in their time of need. Miigwech.
Thank you. So this brings to a conclusion the audience participation part. We have one final part to go, and that is that each candidate will have closing remarks. We're going to go in reverse order, so that's 3, 2, 1. You will have a minute and a half. And 3, 2, 1 is Laura, NDP, Robin with the Green Party, and Terry with the Liberals. Ready now.
Are we going to do a minute and a half again? Are we doing minute and a half? Okay, perfect. Thank you all so much for your questions. They were very pointed, they were very precise, and I think that we had a lot of really great conversation about what kind of approaches that we could be taking moving forward. Whether or not they are all implemented, I think is going to be what the choice is going to happen. That's going to happen. For myself, I'm running for the New Democratic Party because I've been involved in the party for 10 years. I believe that the New Democrats are the place that push progressive values forward, that protect human rights, that are the ones who call out injustice, that are the ones who ensure that everybody is taken care of. And that's what I'm here to do. I think that's part of my responsibilities as a First Nations person, as an Anishinaabe Kwe in this area. And so I really hope that you had a good understanding of where I was coming from, and I hope that I really got a great understanding of what are some of the issues that are really affecting you every day. So thank you so much for all your help and your participation in this debate.
Miigwech, everybody. Miigwech to the Legion. Miigwech to the committee. Miigwech Terry. Miigwech Laura. Miigwech to our awesome moderator, keeping time. In this beautiful community that I've always been so proud to be a part of. I had the opportunity to leave and not come back, but I chose to stay because I love it here. And we need to protect what we have now. We need to protect the bush. We need to make changes. I know that our youth, everybody deserves a cancer-free community. We can eradicate it, we can work harder, we can implement changes. Don't be scared to do that because we need to do it. And Green Party policy is right here to support that. Again, miigwech to everybody. Thank you for your time. Miigwech.
And thank you very much for such thoughtful questions. This was an excellent forum. Thank you very much to the retired teachers and retired federal workers for organizing this. I've met with you throughout my tenure as law, and so I just love this area. We're very gifted to have this area. We're here today at the Legion. This is one of the projects. I've been able to garner over $1 billion worth of investment for this community by rolling up my sleeves and working hard. This is one of the ones that I am really proud of. 108 units that are housing veterans, seniors, a whole bunch of people, some affordable, different things, but look at this beautiful space that we're in now. I look forward to continuing working and delivering results for all of you with your vote. Mark Carney, I'm so glad that he is our Prime Minister now. He has stood strong. He's stood up to Trump. He's going to create one economy. He has a plan to get more doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals that this community and this area needs so much by tearing down interprovincial barriers for people to practice, recruiting more, and building more spaces for training here. So that's just one of the many issues that I'm going to work on. And together, we're going to beat Trump. Thanks for standing strong. Thank you for standing tall. Thank you very much.
This concludes the formal part of the meeting. Let me thank the candidates for standing in this election. As we all know, it takes a great deal of time, effort, and courage to put yourself forward as a candidate. but your efforts make democracy a reality in our community. I would also like to thank them for their participation today. And to you, the audience, thank you so much for your participation and your presence. I hope that the candidates can stay for a while so that the audience can meet with you and speak with you. For all of us, I would like to thank the sponsoring associations for organizing this meeting. Have a great afternoon and evening and safe travels home. Thank you very much.